everyone. My name is Talie Baker, and I'm a senior analyst in Aite Group's retail banking and payments practice. I've been working in financial services for about 20 years now, with the last 5 at Aite Group, where I cover retail payments in P2P payments, business to consumer disbursement, bill pay, those types of use cases. I focus on faster payments, cross-border remittances, and I do a little bit of dabbling in e-commerce. So I want to say thank you to everyone in the audience for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today on the topic of payments with a purpose. I think we can all agree that there has been a massive move towards the digitization of everything in the world, and money movement is definitely no exception to that rule. Across the globe today, we're seeing payments modernization as a result of things like smartphone adoption, open banking and API standards. We're seeing the development of global faster payments capabilities across the globe. And we're also seeing huge advancements in fraud detection and security when it comes to payments. This technical revolution, combined with the global pandemic, has really hastened both consumer and business demand for digital money movement. In the past, money has moved via legacy players. So via financial institutions, via the card networks, via payment processors. But today we're seeing all kinds of new providers and new products and services in the marketplace. We're seeing a new wave of digital-only challenger banks that are challenging legacy financial institutions. We're seeing a new breed of payment platforms that are providing digital payments capabilities across just about every single use case. I'm thinking companies like PayPal. I'm thinking about companies like Trustly, who's going to be speaking with us today. There are also new players providing products and services to make global commerce possible for merchants, doing things like making onboarding easier, facilitating cross-border payments, providing connectivity to alternative payment schemes. And speaking actually about alternative payments, we're seeing an increasing number of alternative payment methods supporting e-commerce emerging. Among other payments use cases, we're seeing tons of digital wallets out there. We're seeing even cryptocurrency becoming, it's like at the very beginning of maybe becoming an actual viable payment method at some point. And then we're also seeing repurposing of legacy payment methods such as e-transfers or online banking payments that are starting to gain steam in e-commerce in both the Canada and the US. So sort of taking old things and making them new again. So all of these advancements right now are revolutionizing the way that we move money. And there is so much differentiation and competition in the market today that we are really seeing consumers and merchants focusing on adopting payments with a purpose, or payments that really make a difference in their daily lives or in their business operations. So we've got a great group of panelists today to talk about some of these concepts. And I want to take a minute to meet our panelists. So everyone on the panel today, if you could just take a minute or so to introduce yourselves and your organization and kind of your perspective. Justin, let's start with you.
I'm Justin Ferrabee, and I'm here representing Trustly, which is a global account-to-account based payment system. And I've been in and around payments for about 5 to 7 years, and I've been working with them for a while.
Okay, great. And John, how about you?
Yeah, good morning, everyone, and thanks for inviting me to the panel. I'm John Cowan, the Chief Technology and Operations Officer at Payments Canada. We're building the utility for the future for Canada for faster payments and for large value, and our responsibilities around safety and soundness of the Canadian ecosystem and to make us truly competitive globally.
Okay, great. And Filippa.
Hi, my name is Filippa, and I am the founder of Wildhood Foundation, which is a Swedish nonprofit. It's what I usually refer to as a small organization with big goals. The small is represented by the minimal administrations, which is me, myself, and I. It's a one-man band. And the big goal is obviously what we are working to to stop the illegal killing and trade in wildlife, which is today, unfortunately, the world's fourth biggest criminal industries.
Oh, wow.
And my whole life is about payments since I'm depending on fundraising. So that's what I do.
Okay, great. So let's talk a little bit about what payments with a purpose means to each of your organizations. Filippa, why don't we start with you on that one?
Yeah, like I said, my whole life is about fundraising nowadays, and the payments within Wildhood and for Wildhood is all for a purpose. So it's a very easy question to ask. And the purpose in this case is to basically protect and preserve Earth's biodiversity, and try to stop our ecosystems from collapsing. So it's a big challenge that I'm facing, but obviously payments is a big content of what I do.
Yes. Yeah, Justin, what does payments with a purpose mean to Trustly?
I think what Filippa is saying is a very interesting thing, in that payments with purpose is often payments supporting purpose as well as payments with purpose. But payments are an enabler. They help things to happen. And if they can be faster and easier and less expensive, then they help more things to happen. So the purpose in payments is about building capability and capacity so people like Filippa and organizations like Filippa's are able to do something meaningful and not do it at a cost that's prohibitive. And it's hard. Payments are complicated and they're complex, and there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of different actors. There's a lot of different layers. There's a lot of risk that has to be managed. There's technology investments, lots of things. So how do we, as payments people, bring our own sense of purpose, which is to enable others to do better and to do it faster and cheaper and in a much more efficient way?
Yeah. And I think that's so true, Justin, especially for smaller organizations like Filippa's, where it's a one-man band that's trying to run the business and build all the infrastructure underneath.
Yeah, and I think in many ways the other piece, the purpose piece, and I think it's very fortunate that we have Filippa here, is that a commercial enterprise that has an added cost to payments for convenience and risk management and other things like that is in many cases justifiable. It's not preferred, but it's justifiable. The challenge when you have a one-person show who is taking on a very big challenge and is in the business of collecting money and then distributing it in order to help to accomplish something profound, is that those single digits of cost matter. And it's not a commercial enterprise. Every administrative cost takes away from the purpose. And so our job is to help and to enable her and others like her to be able to do this at no commercial or at a very favorable commercial cost when she doesn't have the same challenges as a big enterprise might have.
Yep. Yeah. John, tell us what payments with a purpose means to Payments Canada. You have such a bigger perspective on the market. It'd be great to hear.
Well, I don't think it's that much bigger than everyone else has just mentioned. It's about efficiency in the payment systems that are low cost to everybody with data that goes with it. We've got to be able to traverse systems and allow access into the market. Often you spoke about legacy before. Legacy is important, but it's not the only thing. Innovation itself, big firm, comes from everybody. And we want to see an environment in Canada that makes us globally able to move money to any place that we require at any time with the right data that goes with that payment. It's about efficiency. It's about security. When you talk about fundraising, you talk about large commercial payments, everyday payments, low value, cross-border. It's all about efficiency and security. And of course, Filippa spoke about, being the fourth largest criminal activity. Thanks for that. And you think about it, there's an element of risk here, and AML compliance and things like that need to be really importantly put together by Payments Canada to ensure that safe and secure payments happen efficiently in real time at a low cost with access. And payments with a purpose for me is allowing anyone to move money where they want in real time legitimately. And if we do that effectively, we change the competitive nation of Canada and how it will act. And it doesn't matter what type of stored value, be it crypto. We all talk about crypto being the new thing, or existing currency or tokenization and all of the different things. In the end, it's movement of value, whatever that value is in real time. So that is payments with a purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about some of the alternative payment methods are out there. I want to specifically talk about online banking payments or e-transfers or account-to-account transfers. They're kind of all the same thing. The e-transfers have been around for a long time, but I think they've been primarily used in Canada and the US for account-to-account transfers between two people, maybe to make bill payments, things like that. This payment method does have prevalence in Europe and some of the European markets for e-commerce today, and we're starting to see interest in using this payment method both in Canada and the US today. So I want to talk a little bit about how that is payments with a purpose, how it's helping change the face of business today. Since e-commerce in North America has long been dominated by card payments, what's needed to re-educate consumers on the value proposition of online banking payments for e-commerce, and how do we shift that tide? John, I'm just wondering what your perspective is on that.
Well, I think it's already starting to actually change. Millennials themselves have different challenges compared to a lot of other people around the way they look at finance, and using their own funding in lieu of looking for liquidity from other methods, be it credit card rails or other rails. There's a lot of new alternate methods coming out, specifically at merchant services, and there's a lot of, there's the pay by banks, there's the pre-merchant approvals, the afterpays. There's lots of new technology coming out for ways of funding different things. Millennials worry a lot about their ability, to buy a house, pay their student debt, to survive in the, post the recession of 2008 and now post-COVID. So they're looking at using their own liquidity instead of borrowing in a lot of different ways. I look at, the global economy with 43 countries doing faster payment rails at the current time, and the interoperability of those in the future will make seamless transition of payments much more clear. So as I look forward to the alternate methods of payments and why e-transfer will play a part, but it really is moving stored value from one thing to another, be it on the blockchain, be it via e-transfer, account number-based routing. I look at charities with, near-field communications where people don't want to physically give out cash anymore. You look at the Nordic countries, cashless. I think we have to be able to move money in real time, be it via e-transfer, be it via email, SMS, smart names, whatever it is, from one point to another. And Justin said it right before, it has to be at very low cost. And that's what we're heading towards. And it has to be rich. It has to have data with it so people can do automatic reconciliation. They can do the accounting and it can be seamless. And the innovation is profound at the current time around the new payment methods.
Yeah. Justin, how do you think that online banking payments could be viable, feasible, and secure alternative payment methods for businesses and shoppers?
I think they are right now. I think the adoption, which was the part of your question as well, is to make it available. For in many places, it hasn't been available. In Canada, it's largely been credit card as the primary availability of the payment method. Now, Payments Canada is in the process of modernizing the infrastructure so that we can bring bank-based payments to online in a secure manner, and that's all well underway, and that's going to transform the landscape in Canada. In the interim, we've got companies like Trustly and others that are finding ways to use existing rails to bring that capability to Canadians, but it's happening in other countries as well, bringing it to consumers so that they can use it and access it. And I think what we see is where it's available, it's adopted. There is a percentage of the market that would prefer not to use credit card. They don't have the option, so they use credit card, and then there's a percentage that would prefer not to, and there are some that just haven't thought about it. And so it's not going to replace credit cards. It is going to be another method of payment and an option, and people will use it. But the adoption will come from two things. One is it has to be available, because they can't adopt it if it's not available, and it has to be trusted. And that could be through a trusted network like an Interact, or it could be through a trusted body that supports it in behind like a Payments Canada, or it could be a trusted commercial enterprise like a large technology company, or someone like Trustly who's in payments and has demonstrated that they're trustworthy in other places as well. So it is coming. It's actually here. It's not elegant below the surface because the modernized infrastructure hasn't quite come to market yet. But as it comes to market, that kludgy under the surface workaround will slowly fall away, and we'll be using a much more robust, rigorous, capable infrastructure that will have higher limits, will be faster. As John says, we'll have more information in it, and we'll see an explosion of services that come with that. It won't just be payments anymore. There'll be all kinds of value-added overlay services that sit on top of that that aren't really enabled just yet because of the difficulty of the payment system.
Right. John, could you comment on that too? How do you think that online banking payments could be viable payment alternative for businesses and consumers?
Well, it's very clear. Justin mentioned that there's going to be so many competitive services that are being built around the faster payment rails. It's a ability for people to come up with new competitive services that will be in the market. I look at trade, cross-border, with data in real time. It's going to change the way we do things. It could be on the blockchain. It might be on a different way. I look at the ability of charities to raise money with near-field communications instead of physical cash, tapping your card, tapping some type of stored value. I think the future is very different. And, as I said, as a utility in the center, Payments Canada wants to, have the right APIs so people can really build great competitive services. And you talk about the, large banks and the legacy players and the small innovators. I'm really interested to see all of the new payment methods as we truly become one global economy that works in real time. And I'm looking forward. And Justin talked about Trustly and others. But below the surface, it's older legacy infrastructure. It's going to be real time at low cost and a fair and competitive playing field for all participants. And that's going to be a really interesting part to see the competitive nature of Canada and globally, to be honest, because you're seeing proliferations of incredible technology from these faster payment rail countries.
I would just add something, Talie, in this, in that you've composed a very balanced panel, in that you've got John, who represents the infrastructure, which is being modernized. You've got Filippa, who represents the need on the other side, which is, I don't need any special things. I don't need rewards or anything like that. I just need a really simple payment that doesn't cost as much. And you got Trustly, who's been trying to do that in between. Until the infrastructure comes on, how do we get something to fill up in between? And I think there's been some innovation there. As John says, it is happening. It's over top of legacy systems, so it's not as simple as straightforward, but it is effective. And the demand, the growth of these companies, and Trustly is having exponential growth, is because there's a demand for it. So the work that's being invested in Payments Canada is meeting a demand that we know is there now because we're seeing it. And Filippa represents it well. So we have the full value chain here, and you can see that this is playing out across this country and many, many others at this kind of pace.
Yeah. So, one thing that I think is happening in the market is there's so much innovation happening, and there's even like an attitude of, if we build it, they will come, with a lot of things that are happening. And I especially think about that for faster payments rails, and sometimes products and services like what Trustly is bringing to market. And I often hear questions from financial institutions, well, what do we do with this payments technology? So could you talk a little bit about what payments use cases are well suited for online banking payments? Justin, sorry.
Sure. I think almost all payments are well suited for it. But there's payments that are, if I want to buy something, there's also disbursements. And I know that when the pandemic first hit and governments were trying to get funds out to their citizens, there was a lot of movement that happened. So financial institutions made exceptions and made exceptional efforts. The payment infrastructure in Canada, Payments Canada, others all rallied around, and they found ways to make payments out. But bank-based payments need to go both ways. So we have people who need to be able to buy something. The primary benefactor is the small business who is trying to sell online, where we probably didn't foresee that with the credit card infrastructure. A credit card is incredibly convenient for the traveler. We didn't imagine that it would be as expensive for a small business to be able to sell online. Now we have small businesses who are trying to sell online, and they have a high cost to that right now, just because of all of the infrastructure that supports the payment of the credit card. But the online is really targeted towards e-commerce for small merchants. It benefits everybody, but those that struggle the most, and we're seeing it exaggerated in the pandemic, because we need to build back, and it's the small businesses that got hit the hardest. So everybody, and I'm certain that the financial institutions and the infrastructure are all trying to find ways to help them as we build back faster.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'll be cool when one day, you can go into a grocery store. You don't have to pull out a card. You could just like maybe type in your phone number or something and pay for your groceries that way. That'll be some cool. And use your bank account the way that you do your debit card. Yeah. So, Justin, just to follow on a little bit, where do you think that online banking payments fit in with the move towards faster payments around the globe? How does all of that work together?
Yeah, I think right now online payments are really done as a convenience because they're not real time. They are taking an existing infrastructure, an ACH or an EFT or a bill pay or whatever other infrastructure is there, and they're building on top of that to try and make it as convenient and as easy as possible. But it's often not real time. So there's a risk in there. And so there's an added cost that comes with that. And these firms, and Trustly is a good example, are very good at managing the risk. So they take the risk, they make it as a real-time payment for the merchant, but it's not because the infrastructure doesn't move at that speed. So when we see real-time payments or an RTR in Canada or RTP in the US or faster payments in other places, that is an immediate risk reducer. It reduces the risk in a good funds model. It allows innovation to happen more quickly, funds to flow more quickly, and it enables, it de-risks so much that allows the values to go up, and all of a sudden you're enabling much more commerce to come in because the sidelines of commerce sit there and they use wires and they use bank drafts and they use other things because the values are too high. So they can't participate in the real-time nature. As soon as these new infrastructures come on, we'll start to see commerce move entirely over. We're seeing it at the consumer level, but we'll start to see it at the enterprise level where the commerce moves online and is real-time, and it's just going to accelerate the economy, and of course that means growth.
Yeah. Filippa, I think it would be really interesting if you talked to us a little bit about how online banking payments has really benefited the Wildhood Foundation.
Yeah, for Wildhood, it was a huge step actually to go from not having online payment opportunities to incorporating it to our website. I put a huge amount of time into researching potential partners and who could help Wildhood with the solution, who could do it at, like Justin said, the cost perspective is for a charity it's a very big thing, and I actually ended with Trustly for the reason that it is a very I'd say safe to begin with, but also quick and easy method of payment. And the main reason Trustly is good for donations is because of the opportunity to have recurring payments, and to actually offer a subscription or for us to get a donor on a monthly basis is of course a huge opportunity to increase. I was about to say sales, but for increased donations or fundraising over time. So that was my main goal when doing the research, and also from a Swedish perspective, because I benchmarked and compared to a lot of international players or offers, and for me to have a payment option which is in Swedish. For the donor to feel comfortable in the environment they move around in, and when they donate, they do it in Swedish kroners. And I think that's a huge thing. If you shop online, it's okay to go onto eBay and buy something in dollars or euros or whatever. But if you commit to giving a monthly donation and do it over time, you want to feel you want to be close to the actual payment, and you want to feel comfortable and safe. So that was, I'd say, the main reason. And so for Wildhood, it's gone from 0 online payments to, we actually today have a little bit over 100 monthly subscribers, which is very little at the time, but a lot from where we started. The goal is obviously to multiply that with a big number over time, but also we get the single donations, which is which is good. But my main goal is to increase the recurring payments or donations in this case.
Yeah, that's amazing. Filippa, do you find that people are hesitant to use their online banking credentials to like store it in your website? How do they feel secure about that?
I think it's both ways. I think again, people feel more comfortable if the environment is in the local language. If they see elements that they recognize from their own market perspective.
Yeah.
I think it could be both ways, but I don't experience that personally for Wildhood. I don't experience it as a big problem, actually.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that's part of the shift that consumers need to make when thinking about using online banking payments, is to go from using my credit card number that feels somewhat secure to putting in my actual bank account information. So that's cool to hear that it's not really deterring people from engaging with your company.
It's an interesting thing you raise in terms of it's the risk that people, or the perceived risk that a consumer will have. And I think that was much higher earlier days, screen scraping and a few other things where everyone was like, they've got arrangements with their bank on their account holder agreement, and they're sharing passwords and all. Like, there's just a lot of stuff, and I think that is not as prevalent now, although it started there. Trustly, for example, is at the API layer. It's not. This is, and they're not holding any of these credentials, and I'm sure others as well. But it's the architecture at its foundation is much deeper than historically when FIs weren't as up to date with it. Screen scraping was faking to be the customer. FIs are partners now. They're opening up APIs, they're locking them down, they're making them more secure. Customers are not taking the same risks they used to take. And what we're finding is already the new services, the alternate payments are bringing new services that a credit card can't bring. And that is in authentication, KYC, AML, the validation, because it's got a bank-based validation. If you can confirm that the person online is the person who owns this bank account, you've got a whole infrastructure of AML and KYC. The rigor that the bank has is now applied to the single transaction. So in some ways, it's actually more rigorous than the credit card network is, and there's less fraud if it's a capable actor, so to speak. And I think that the world is changing, and in many cases has. It hasn't all caught up, but the new alternate payments are very different than the ones from 5 years ago.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And what my research shows is that, and this is a global phenomena that's happening, I think, is that people, and this might be the millennial aspect that John was talking about a little bit earlier, but people really prefer their bank accounts to be at the center of all of their payments transactions, I think, for a lot of different reasons. Probably one of the most important is being able to manage my finances more closely by having my bank account right there, front and center. So,
and John's point earlier about the information that goes with it, if it's all going through a single account, and I'm a small business, now I can not only have the payment and have a 5-digit thing that tells me where it came from, but my itemized receipt can come with it, and it can be digitized, and it can be part of QuickBooks. So it's like the information coming with that payment is absolutely critical to the explosion of new services. Otherwise, it's the same thing.
Right. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how online banking payments support merchants with a more sustainable approach to payments. Justin, could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sustainability in a lot of, there's a price to entry. And I think John uses the word, it has to be legitimate. So you got to make sure these are legitimate payments, and that's not trivial. But if you can get in to a payment infrastructure or a payment system, and you can ensure legitimacy, and you can ensure security and safety, soundness, robustness, then the next piece is adding value out of that, and that's really where the game changes competitively.
Yeah, Filippa, how about you? How do you think that online banking payments are more a sustainable approach for your business?
I think from the Swedish perspective, I hope this gives an answer to your question, but I think we have a very interesting trend here in Scandinavia, where big online players, retailers, feel and need to show that they take responsibility when it comes to giving a good example and engaging in various causes, and also showing giving their customers the opportunity to engage in various causes. We have quite a lot of examples actually where you can, in the register, when you check out, before actually proceeding to payment, you can engage and donate or support various causes. And there are also examples of how this actually not only contribute with millions of SEK or even dollars to various charities, but it actually also increases sales, and mainly through customer loyalty. And I think also, you spoke earlier about the new generation and the new demand, and I think this is going to be crucial in the future. And also, I think it's interesting how these big online players can also, use their platforms and their reach for a higher purpose and for a good cause by offering this. And obviously, for my business, that's also a very good opportunity, and businesses like mine to partner up with retailers and online players and benefit from the actual register and the payment.
Yeah.
Can I add to my answer? I had two more things.
Yeah.
The first is that it has to be. It's not unlike me to add in after hearing someone else. So the infrastructure has to be robust. It has to be more affordable. If it wants to be sustainable, it has to be solid. You can't fake this, and you won't last in the industry if you're not playing solid and robust. You have to be cheaper, or at least as affordable or more affordable, because sustainability is about making this be able to go farther, and that's where the pricing matters a lot. And then it has to be extendable so that you can add services, otherwise you can come out of date. And I think that what we're seeing in alternative payment methods, all three of those are being met. Not everybody is doing all three of those. Trustly is an example of all three of those, but there are others. And there are some who are doing one or two of those. But if you want to be a sustainable player in the alternative payments, you have to have the infrastructure, you have to have the cost, and you have to have the services.
Yeah, 100%. Filippa, how do you see this type of payments technology supporting a more ethical and inclusive experience for merchants like yourself?
I think, again, back to the perspective of the safety, that's a very important part of the actual, bringing a potential donor, taking him or her over the edge and actually proceeding to commit to a payment. Obviously, for Wildhood and for my business, this is it means everything to have this in the portfolio and to actually be able to offer this to an international crowd.
Yeah, definitely.
Did that answer your question?
It does, yeah. So John, I think this is always the hottest topic whenever I'm talking about payments with anyone. But what type of fraud are you seeing? Is Payments Canada seeing with online banking transfers? And in what way can a merchant or even the financial institution offering this payment method mitigate fraud with these new payment methods?
Look, I think the critical part is the data that traverses with payments and the sharing of data between multiple different counterparties. I think it's really important. Justin mentioned alternate payment providers. I actually think they're all payment providers, and their data is critical to look at fraud in the ecosystem itself. What has Payments Canada seen over the last year and a half as we've gone through the pandemic? Clearly in the government initiatives around the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit, etc., there was a significant push by the large financial institutions to get more account-based direct deposits to accounts and getting more sign-ups in lieu of checks going out and cashing checks and physical cash and things like that. There's significant fraud in the ecosystem, but if you look across it and you have a central repository of all of the data and you know who the bad actors are, and you quickly start taking them down and you look at mule accounts and you start to look at who's where and people share data around fraud, I think we get to a stronger and safer environment for all the payments, and it should provide data back. When Filippa spoke about wanting to provide secure payments to her clients, we want to be able to provide that data back to each commercial client so they can actually advise their clients. It's about a safe ecosystem. And, Trustly, there's a lot of different participants in this. The other part in fraud, we're moving to behavioral transaction monitoring. So there's AI, there's new types of monitoring available, looking across, as I said, the whole ecosystem, not just in Canada, but globally around the traversion of funds from a fraudulent perspective. And we're finding more and more data leads to better identification of that. Now, again, the fraudsters are obviously active. We hear about North America and we hear about all types of frauds that go on. We need to continue to invest in this, but it's becoming more and more of a utility where a lot of participants in payments are now sharing data to try and stop fraud. And that's going to be critical in the future. The final thing I would say, though, sharing data is important, but also security of that data and using of the data for the right purpose is also really important to consumers. Otherwise, they won't trust us for that either. Yeah. So there's a very delicate balance around what we need to do. We have to make payments move with liquidity. So if you think about check fraud and you think about things like that, batch payments, we need to move where it's an irrevocable payment and it's good funds. That means decision points need to happen before a payment is made. It's moving where the transaction fraud decisions are made. It's a pay no pay decision much earlier in the sequence, where before a check might be issued, you then go through clearing, it comes back in a number of days. In the future, I don't see that type of decisions. I see real-time decisions being made. And a lot of the innovation and the alternate providers and the legacies are all actually working together to make liquidity in the market, which I mean irrevocable payments in real time and data flowing with it, and request to pay is the opposite way, will lead to real-time decisioning on all of payments in the future. And that will lead to better fraud outcomes.
Yeah, I totally agree. Justin, do you mind talking a little bit?
Yeah, I think there's another dimension to the ethical issue here, and this is not as popular a view as some of the others that we hear about payments, and that's the role of credit in payments. The use of credit cards is very, very convenient for most people, and it is a very profoundly valuable service to protect you as a consumer, for convenience in purchasing, and for all the other ways that we use our credit cards. It's not great for small businesses who pay a higher cost than high volume merchants, and it drives consumers to credit. And for many, that's not a problem. Credit is a convenience, a 30-day convenience. But for others, it's not. It is an unfortunate a reality that by using credit, they find themselves further behind or unable to pay at the end of the month, and then they're caught in a interest rate that's much higher. And so it's not those cards aren't targeting those people, but those people are suffering from that. And if they would prefer to pay by a bank, they don't have that option, or they're not eligible for a credit card, or for other reasons where it's really on the margins that the inclusion is not there. And that for me is ethical. As a payment system operator, we have an obligation, because it's an infrastructure and it is part of everything, we have an obligation to be inclusive, to be affordable, and to be able to provide opportunities for services to improve. And I think as a whole, all of us have not done a good job of bringing that cost down. Although there is risk in the payment, there is also risk in running a business. And a percentage of my revenue as a small business person is not the preferred model overall, and we need to find ways to make it more affordable for small businesses and to give options for payment for people who need to manage their finances in a different way.
Yeah. That's totally true on ethical and inclusive payments. Let's talk a little bit about fintech and open banking within Canada. How does partnering with a fintech firm help a financial institution bring alternative payment methods to market? John, I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think partnerships with fintech firms bring innovation. It's clearly they're looking globally. They're coming up with new ideas and ways to move money around the system and the data that goes with that. It's not just money, it's actually the convenience of the services they're providing in lots of ways. Their ability to have agile delivery with new functionality regularly that keeps up to date with consumers. Filippa mentioned before all of the market research. There's a lot going on, and partnering with the fintechs and innovation, I think is critical to the success of the banking industry in the future. I look at some of the global players like the Commonwealth Bank in Australia that, that's their means of innovation. In North America so far, it's not necessarily always that means, but again, Justin spoke about the number of banks that are now opening their APIs, they're looking at digital identity. They see the future and they can see it coming with open banking and the ability to manage, partner, and to really meet what the consumer and business needs are. We talked about liquidity for small business before. It's going to be critical for their survival post-COVID. How do we ensure that all of these different systems that we're putting together in the ecosystem work together, and open APIs, the ability in open banking to share data, the ability for a small business to have their invoices reconciled, lower cost that Justin talked about is going to be critical. So I actually think partnering with fintechs from not just the legacy, but fintechs with fintechs and building marketplaces is the future to provide the best possible consumer outcomes. And if they do that well, they deserve our accolades as we continue to make Canada more competitive and hopefully globally more competitive.
Yeah. So you'd say there's a pretty big appetite in Canada for partnering with fintech, both from a network perspective and then infrastructure perspective, and then also a bank perspective or a financial institution?
Well, I think it's absolutely clear if you don't partner, do you survive?
Right.
Because you can't do everything for your partners, and consumers are very quick to pick up the next app and to change around, and they go into digital banking and digital opportunities, and you can't build everything. And if you think you can, you probably will never get to the level that the consumers want, because by the time you build what you require from a legacy perspective, it's already moved on. So I think partnering is the only means to success, and looking at for best of breed, and because they're also not sitting still. Trustly's a good example. They're not sitting still, they're partnering themselves. And so it's an interesting marketplace, as I call it, as we look to the future. And if people won't be part of that marketplace, will they survive? That's a great question in payments. Yeah.
And one thing that I'm seeing from a lot of the different companies that I talk to is that sometimes, especially for a small business, that a company like Trustly or other companies offering similar payments technology, it's just easier for them to connect to the payment rails through these smaller fintechs. They're just designing it. So it seems to me makes sense for a bank to partner with these companies that are making it easy to get technology into the hands of businesses and consumers. John, where do you think that a financial institution should start in its strategy to offer online banking payments?
Well, I don't think they're starting. Clearly in Canada, there's an advantage in Canada because consumers are very used to online banking payments through the in-market Interact solution. But to Justin's point, it's not real time. It's not irrevocable, and the fraud services that come with it need to evolve and change over a period of time. So Canada, it came from a position of strength, but it hasn't moved to account number based routing, hasn't moved to data enriched payments. It hasn't moved to be an open ecosystem that forces competition and reduces cost and allows APIs to be used. Justin talked about that before. In the future, where do they start? They're already there. They need to enhance and partner and really create great consumer experiences. So the start is there for all players, but now it's about buy, build, partner, innovate. And if people continue to do that, we'll see an incredible change in the payment landscape in Canada.
Yeah. One thing that is popping into my mind as we're talking about this topic, what do you think, Justin, online banking payments mean to the future of card payments? Do you think we're going to, at some point, see a decrease in card payments along with a decrease in cash for payment methods such as online banking payments?
I think that broadly we'll just see an expansion of payment methods. We will see a slower growth, but it won't be eroded. It won't be stealing market share. The market will grow, and card networks are adapting as well. I mean, to John's point, every actor in the system right now is adapting. Everybody is trying to find the new thing that they can do. The FIs are, the networks are, the fintechs and paytechs are, and that means more richness for consumers and business. But it's just going to get bigger. We haven't seen. I mean, we've see cryptocurrency becoming mainstream. We see online banking becoming mainstream. We see open banking coming. The explosion has only just begun. And what we've seen in the last 5 years is the conversation we just had about partnering with financial institutions was not the same conversation 5 years ago, because it was a nascent industry. It was not reliable. It wasn't informed. It wasn't experienced. And banks weren't going to take risks with the trust that they'd built with their consumer base. But that's changing. So we're seeing banks have become more aware, knowledgeable, and capable of making change, but also knowing what they want and need. And the market is delivering much more capable organizations. Trustly is a good example. It's a multi-billion-dollar company that has thousands of bank connectors at the infrastructure layer and millions of customers. I mean, that's not what you would see 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But what I would say and I'm not sure this answers your question, but I was slightly concerned we'd run out of time. And I wanted to say that what Filippa describes as a single individual in a Nordic country who starts a social enterprise to save wildlife everywhere, but in Africa to start with, and works on her own and needs to get payments and wouldn't be able to access credit cards and other things 5 years ago, wouldn't have been an option. Or if it would have been very, very expensive. That is an inspiration for me and for what we do in payments. The fact that a single person can do what she is doing now for a cause that is greater than any of us at this stage, and we can help to enable that. That's why all of us do what we're doing. There's helping the economy, but this works at the personal level, and we don't forget that.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so true. Yeah, because when we start talking about networks, faster payments, all of that stuff, you tend to forget, like, it's really impacting a person's life. It's impacting the health of a business. So such a good point. Justin, I'm just wondering, why should online banking payments or other alternative payment methods for that matter be a priority for a financial institution to make sure they're offering to both their business customers and their consumer customers?
There's lots of reasons. The first is it's the right thing to do. The second thing is their customers want it. The third thing is they know how to do it and they know how to do it well. And that the time in the past where this was obviously the single domain of a financial institution has changed. So, and I don't think that's news to any financial institution. I think they're on board with all of those things. I don't think they would dispute any of that. I think it's just overwhelming now. There was uncertainty, there was risk, there was ambiguity, there was threats. They're commercial enterprises. They need to fully understand it, and I think they do. And I think there'll be a reluctance. I think that there is a cannibalization of a financial institution's revenue when you start to disaggregate services, because there's a real benefit to having them aggregated. But banks are smart. They're full of smart people who know how to figure out how to offer new products and to make money doing it. So I think that they will come around on it, and they are coming around on it. I think you'll see some consolidation. You'll see the paytechs and the fintechs grow and succeed in gaining market share. You'll see some consolidation. You'll see some specialization in the FIs. And the supply side will adapt to this. I think it's the time of ambiguity or uncertainty as to whether it's going to adapt is gone. It's going to happen. The question is, who are going to be the players and what is it going to look like?
Yeah. And Filippa, why do you think that offering online banking payments should be a priority for a merchant?
I think it's the future. I mean, it's if you need to get reach, if you need to speak to a broader public, from my perspective, to go international, it's crucial. I mean, I could speak to the people I have in my closest environment and ask them to very manually transfer a donation from their bank account to Wildhood's account. But in order to grow and from my perspective, in order to really make a difference, that's where the future is. And I'd also like to add, actually, to what I said in the beginning about doing research. It's quite nice to be able to find a partner within the payment business, which actually has a heart. My business is, I don't have a big wallet to invest in infrastructure or platforms or things that I wish I could pay for. So doing this research and actually finding Trustly that backs my foundation and supports the work that we do here is quite amazing, actually. So I'd like to take the opportunity to mention that and say thank you, and I'm very happy for that.
That's awesome. That's awesome news. Well, I think that's kind of the conclusion of our session today. I wanted to thank everyone again for taking some time to listen to what we had to say on the topic. And I just also wanted to let you know, if anyone wants to find some more information out about Trustly, Aite Group's writing, every quarter we write a Fintech spotlight on some of the new and interesting Fintechs that are out in the marketplace. And we are featuring Trustly in our Q2 Fintech Spotlight, which will be publishing towards the end of June. So feel free to visit our website and check that report out. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.